I'm Cyclone. Today I wanted to share the updated version of my survivability focusing Aurabot. First, I do want to apologize to everybody who tried it out at League launch, either of my support variants that I've made a video about. They were working in theory, it looking actually quite well, but when it came to actually doing them, there were a lot of flaws and a lot of new things that weren't considered in. And I do apologize for everybody who I baited into trying them and then they're not working as intended. I will not do that again. I will always now try, when I make an Aurabot video, to first fully try out the Aurabot. No more this works theoretical. If it doesn't work in practice at this point, I will not put it in there. I will just mention it then that this could work, not I'm sure that it works. So yeah, again, I'm really sorry for that. This will not happen again. I will now, when I make a video, I will first fully test it out and then just mention here, this might be a theoretical possibility, but it isn't tested yet. That being said, this is also not going to be a full build guide. I'm going to mention everything I have, but I'm not going to have a leveling section. I'm not going to how to get to this point. I'm just going to mention what I did with this, what I changed and what I improved, that I was able to fit all auras and how to gain my aura effect, how to make this tanky enough that it survives stuff and over the items. I will, however, make a full guide towards the next league, towards league launch. When we get new information about what will be there, I will make an update, I will make a proper guide, I will put a lot of effort into that then. But for now, this one will just be an update for the survival focused one, how this will work out and what you can do to fit as many auras as doable and to give your character a lot of DPS and have a huge amount of survivability. So, how much is actually what I'm talking about? So we are using 2 offensive auras, which you cannot see because of generosity. If we take a look here, we are using Anger and Wrath, as well as Clarity, Vitality, Purity of Eyes, Lightning, Fire, Discipline, and Precision. And then we use a Defiance banner, a Grace, and a Determination top. And as you can see, I have everything reserved. This is not a cutting in or whatever. And finally, we do have Smite and we do have a link. However, I don't have a target for the link in my highlight right now, so it will have a do. Then we can also fit a custom damage taking setup as well as a survivability package like Phase 1 and Flame Dash. I guess mobility package, not survivability package like Phase 1, Sheer Charge and Flame Dash. But I'm going ahead. I first want to look at the Sensi because there was a huge change. Something that I wasn't sure how affordable it would have been. And it isn't that affordable, to be fair. I think if you go for this very early on, it might be affordable, but I will look into that closer to league launch and then doing the next league launch, how affordable it is. And now what I'm talking about is we have a third sanity choice now. And for Aurabot, this is huge. Because there were 3 sanity choices, 3.5, that were very interesting towards this league launch that we were considering to take. So the Pathfinder right off the way, it wasn't performing as intended to. I am personally, I tried out the flask for a moment, but it didn't feel good enough. So I'm more happy with my survival focus one, even for pushing high tiers of content. You can very easily get a good amount of offensive power and defensive power into the Aurabot without going blood magic and low life. So this is why I'm not a much fan of the flask and Pathfinder anymore. Now we do have Necromancer, Guardian, and the new edition champion. Guardian is a good old Guardian for the regeneration, which we convert with Zealots Oath to ES. We get endurance charges, or we can create them, which if they use a headhunter in and doing a juice map, we usually have all the time. As well, if they use something like Habit of Purity or Skitterbots or any minions, as soon as we have 1 carry and 4 minions or 2 bodies and 3 minions or any combination of that, once we have the 5 allies, we give onslaught to everybody, which is really nice. On top of that, we give physical damage reduction, which does scale with aura effect, as well not curse immunity, but reduce curse effectiveness, which we can combine with a flask to almost get curse immunity. Then we have the Necromancer. Now Necromancer doesn't give as much as Champion, but as Guardian, but what it gives is huge. Attack and cast speed, which again scales with aura effectiveness for every aura. So we on ourselves, we have like 10 auras. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that is from here 12 is 24 physical words. At least 12% physical damage reduction, and from the Necromancer is at least 24 attack and cast speed. Now with Aura effect, this gets more. Then we can get AoE if we consume corpses. So what we can do is have a bone offering in our setup to gain a tiny amount of chance to block and spell block, as well as getting the AoE from the bone offering. Or we can have it in a cast with damage taken setup to automate it, which we could do as well. And that is a really nice thing, but it's by no means needed. And now the 3rd edition champion. The champion, the first part, Fortify, can't work because we're not dealing any damage ourselves, but we taunt enemies. Taunting them means that they take increased damage, as well as they can only target you. That means we take the damage, our carry can apply damage without getting focused. It's really nice for something like rares that survive more than a second, or bosses that survive more than a second. And they do deal less damage, which is also nice to sing. And yeah, we just smite the enemy, we buff our ally, we debuff the enemy, and then as well we can intimidate with this. Now only when they're full life, and it's only useful if the carry is AD based, not attack damage based. But it is really nice. And now the top of this, why we use champion, is a 15% increased effect of non-curse auras. Now curse aura effectiveness is really hard to get at this point. So we really enjoy to have every source we can get. Now almost every source. There are a few exceptions which I will come to later. So champion is really good for us and we do want to take it. However, I would say Guardian Necromancer is first, and only if you can get either of those 3 with a Forbidden Flesh, Forbidden Flame Jewel combination, you can pick up the 3rd. I would say don't get Forbidden Flame and Flesh for champion, because other builds might consider picking up champion themselves, because it is not too bad for non-Aurabot builds. And we can get 20 strength and dexterity on this note, which is a good thing to have. Alright. Rest of the passive tree, not changed too much. We're using a militant phase, rest the line, increase effectiveness of non-curse auras per 10 devotion, and elemental resistances, because I'm not using veteran defender, which I will come to in a moment. We are using that to gain our resistances and gain aura effectiveness, combining it with, yes, kind of pricey, but an unnatural instinct. Unnatural instinct giving us 80 devotion, a bit of stats, and it gives us also a bit of resistances. It's a really nice position there to have it in. But yeah, it's just giving us a good amount of stats here and a good amount of aura effect. Alternatively, you could consider getting like an Elegant Hubris or Glorious Vanity in either here or here, preferable here or here, because there are many nodes we can pass towards and we don't have to travel too far to get them. But there you would really need something like at least 30% aura effectiveness to make this worthwhile. Because with this we already are at 21% with, let's see, 210 devotion. So, and we could get even a bit more by picking up more stuff over here with the rest of our passive points, like the other 2 small ES nodes, getting some mana. If we could get notables like Tolerance of Sin, Militant Phase can be pretty much pushed a bit further, so you will really need a really well rolled Legend Hubris or Glorious Vanity to balance that out. All the stuff hasn't changed intuitively to pick up Charisma and the Resurrection efficiency. Energy from Within, now as you can see there is a corruption on it, but it only gives me 6 mana. There is not a huge gain from that, so it's not needed. I was just able to pick it up because I got it for cheap. For getting melding to gain more ES on this part. Then of course we always pick up Insightfulness for energy shield. We have our Conqueror's efficiency with the corrupt. Now we do need 1 if I remember correctly, because if we use none, we lose too much reservation. We want at least 50 unreserved mana. So Conqueror's efficiency with the corrupt is always good to have all our auras selected. We don't lose any aura, but it's not good to not have it. Now this, sometimes it is pricey, so I recommend to always, if you want to at some point in the league do an Aurabot, always pick this up early. Early on it's like 20-30 chaos, and then it quickly rises in price depending on the popularity of Aurabot and Aura Stacker. Now, over the left, we still take Divine Shield, we take the 2 ES, we take the Jewel slot, and then we get to the top. Now, the interesting part, oh wait, of course we do take all Aura stuff as usual. You can take the increase effect on you don't really need it, it's just for getting additional survivability. On the other masteries, of course, Discipline, Grace. Here you can take things like regenerate ES per second or max mana as ES. And here we take Vitality. We used to pass over here taking Wicked Ward, going for Prodigal Perfection, getting Clarity, which was an option, but right now with the current changes we do need to pick up 5 small clusters with 25% increased effect each to fit 2 offensive auras on top of all defensive auras, which is definitely a huge gain for the carry in terms of damage. And as you can see, I'm using 2 voices. Now, of course, you don't need voices. You could instead do something like this. You use 2 large with Veteran Defender and take over here the last one, the 5th one in this armor large jewel socket, and just taking the tiny one. Now this would mean that you need to fight a spot for Forbidden Flesh, and you will need a few more passives. So what I did is I'm using the Forbidden Flesh here, Forbidden Flame here, and when I get to this point I should also be able to afford 5 passive points, which at this point in the league they were at 10-20 chaos. So they aren't too pricey and you don't need 3 or 1 passives. They are more pricey, so if you want to min-mix, of course it's an option, but it's by no means needed. You could just use 5 passive ones that aren't too pricey and you're good to go. Now that is a tree. Item and skill, I will intertwine it a bit because we need specific skills and specific items. You already seen how I set up my skill bar. You already seen the skills I am using because there isn't much else. We are not using too many support gems. So we have our aura setup in our body armor, helmet, shield and boots, as well as using an amulet to utilize more aura and increasing the effectiveness. Now on the body armor we want a smite with faster attacks. We will just spam that in map, like we run around, smite, we follow the carry, smite, we follow the carry, smite. Of course sometimes we're not able to smite everything because the carry just off-screens, but if the carry is killing, we don't really need to give them more damage, do we? So yeah, smite. Then we do have either malevolence, wrath, hatred, anger, haste, or zealotry. You just use any 2 offensive ones. You don't need them to link. I just had the 4 link when I looked for the 2 link on the bottom. Then on the helmet we are looking at this time an alpha soul with 90% cost and reservation multiplier. This is even better than having things like a 30% increased reservation efficiency on the shield. So what it enables us to do is having 21 purity of lightning, fire and ice, getting 2 levels from here and 1 level from here, getting them to 24, which enables us to get to 97 and more elemental resistances. I said 87. And lastly we also can put our discipline here. Now something that you can do here too, which I was too lazy to try out, or not really try out to do, was having Wall Discipline in the Jewel and having a 21-20 or 21 whatever discipline, 21 old quality discipline, doesn't really matter. So you have more ES from the discipline because the Vault part doesn't scale too well with levels. Now for the shield we lastly use Determination, preferable Divergent, because we have a good amount of evasion rating and then we can get even more armor. We have a Grace to get the evasion rating, and we have a Defiance banner. Anomalous does give more than the base one because Anomalous gives it increased armor and evasion rating, while the base is just giving increased aura effect. We already have a good chunk of aura effect, so it's not too noticeable anymore. And if you want to go over the top, you could take Anomalous, Defiance banner and Divergent Determination, move Grace to somewhere else so you can still fit everything, and then add an Enhance. This will need a heavier investment in reservation efficiency, but the survivability you gain from that is quite absurd. It's like another 10 or 20k armor and evasion rating. 20k armor and 10k evasion rating if I remember correctly. And lastly we can use either link. You could use a Soul Link or you could use a Flame Link. Flame Link would be damage, Soul Link would be survivability. Sadly, it's not considered an aura, so the flat fire damage you gain from Flame Link won't scale with aura effect, but it's a pretty nice additional damage source if you don't need additional survivability with Soul Link. Then on our boots we have our clarity, vitality and precision. We have them at low level. If you have more left mana over, you want to aim to have like 50-60 unreserved mana. We can put more levels into these, but we just want them to be there at least, so we have the additional physical reduction and attack speed from them, as well as potential alternate quality combining with the Ashes of the Stars again to give them even better gains, because the ultimate quality are affected by the aura effectiveness, so it does scale with that. And lastly, mobility, fast attacks, shield charge, and then a flame dash. So flame dash is like our emergency dodge, and our shield charge is for generic mobility. Now in close quarters it's not the best, but in an open layout or road layouts it is quite good. We can also use a dash if you do things like if running with a 5-way with a carry. You could have dash shield charge instead flame dash shield charge. And lastly, we also can consider phase run with increased duration. The reason for phase run is if your carry is a dot build, he won't needing your smite. So you could just use phase run instead. And with the shield charge you can still apply the champion the taunting. And then you have phase run to just run around and not getting targeted, especially good in the Monarchroms. And lastly, we do have a cast and damage taking setup, Molten Shell. In my case, I'm not using a Wall Molten Shell here. Again, I could use a Wall Molten Shell in a different spot at a higher level. So we have Molten Shell with a cast and damage taken setup. But Wall Molten Shell, I like to have all my souls on Wall Discipline, but it's preference there. Lastly, the items that are rare are our 2 rings, the shield and the boots. The rest are pretty much uniques. We want with close to perfect stats as possible. Now, for the helmet, the stat we are looking for is having at least half the cold rest and then having a good roll on the evasion rating. Body armor, we want non-curse effectiveness rolled at maximum, or as good as possible. Syntrack, we want a really high armor, really high evasion rating and ES. Shaper's Touch just has one wall, 100 plus. There we are actually looking for like a +2, +4, or we look for Hands of the High Templar with a +5. So we can later put our offensive auras in there in a min-max setup. However, that is more than enough, what I currently have. And then a Thermal Edge, maximum wall ES, percentage ES rather. And then our rings, we do use a Strength Dexterity ES ring on both hands. So we can put more jewels there, if not for using, then for leveling. And yeah, and then of course Ashes of the Star, we want it as high as possible. We want it to have a high quality and high preservation efficiency. The quality will only be important once we go for alternate quality auras, but with this again they will have a huge effect. This might be that it's not going to be as desirable next league, because it is very likely to get changed, nerfed, or harder to get. We will see that back then when we get to this. And then belt baited brass. Baited brass, we have just ES. You can upgrade this with a Torrent Reclamation, or you could get a high ES, percentage ES, armor, strength belt. Now that would be a really pricey rare, but it will give you a lot of stats. And on the shield we want the reservation efficiency and the energy shield. Now people are considering using the Truhato for the aura effect. For that, on the amulet spot, the Ashes of Star is at this point the +1 level, and the reservation efficiency and the old quality does outscale the Jinx Juju for the aura effectiveness, so there we take the Ashes. And for the shield it is sadly, not really sadly, like some people are taking the 20% increase aura effect, which is huge at this point. But I rather have all my auras without going for the blood magic setup, instead of having a higher aura effect on the auras that I do then only have. So yeah, that is the skill setup, that is the item setup, the flask, jade, granite, stibnite, basalt, and then either quicksilver, a silver, a quicksilver, a quartz. Pretty much the last part is flex. You could even take some unique flask if you want to. I like to have the quicksilver there. We have high movement speed, so we can mostly walk and keep up with the carry. If we are too fast with the carry, then replace it, of course. We then can get armor, we can get curse effect, reduce curse effect, we can get ignite and bleed immunity, and we could get evasion rating or more armor. And yeah, that are my flaws. Now that is pretty much everything. Like I said, I just wanted to go quickly over what I have. This is working. This can do pretty much everything. If you take a look at my defenses, we are looking at unbuffed 48k armor, they're almost 49, 56 evasion rating. Every few seconds we have over 1k ES regen. We had 5.4. This is by no means max. You can see I level 90. I do have all passives and I have killed the bandits, of course, but that is about it. If we use my flask, we are looking at 90k armor, 80k evasion rating. It is really hard to get this killed at some point. But yeah, that's about it. Resistance is only 86, 87. We are CI, so we don't care about Chaos Rest. We have a bit of block. We don't have any spell block. We do have a tiny bit of spell suppression, but not that it would be any reliable. So that is pretty much the build. Now I have a fully unlocked Brine King Soul, and I'm using the Ralakesh Soul with the Corrupted Blood and Bleeding because I don't have it on the flask. But yeah, that's about it. There isn't really any more to mention about this. So that being said, hopefully you will be able to have more fun with the Aurabot than with the ones I recommended at League Start, and have a wonderful day.